Hey, welcome to Quick Take. I'm Susie, along with James. How are you, James?
I'm great. Got a lot of energy today. Too much coffee, I guess.
Yeah, all right. Well, we're talking about AI today. A surprise, I'm sure that it's not on the minds of the people anywhere.
Oh, I know it. I am somewhat tired of talking about it, but I don't know that we can avoid it at this point.
Yeah. So, what angle should we take?
Well, you know what? The reason I wanted to talk about it today is I've had a lot of conversations building on top of some layoffs. Specifically, Microsoft did a huge riff. Google was talking about laying some folks off, and they've been unabashedly saying it's due to AI. I talked to a couple executives who I know listen who said they don't think they will hire any more software development employees in the next year.
Wow.
It's one thing to see changes in the market. It's one thing to see layoffs and swings. But when I think right now it's being attributed to something specific like AI, I think our teams and our leadership has a responsibility to talk about that and prepare our companies and create a situation where your staff can be successful given that kind of ecosystem.
Yeah, because fear is an uncertainty.
It's the worst.
Yeah, one of the four needs of followers, one of them is stability and hope. Though that's not one of them. Those are the two of them. That is a outcome that you need to really be thoughtful around with your team is how do they feel? So that lends itself to making sure that you're reacting to or proactively managing your people.
What are the four needs of a follower?
Yeah, I
I don't
didn't,
want to
that
put you on
wasn't
the
very
spot.
good. It's trust, stability, hope, and compassion. And so without one of those being fulfilled, people are just off. They don't have trust. They don't follow. They're not engaged. And so when you said that, that's what came to mind for me is those needs aren't being met right now with all of this. And a lot of people don't know exactly how it's all going to play out. So it makes it more difficult to want to just alleviate fears because you don't have all the answers.
I'm going to build on that. I think the first thing you can do if we're going to talk about those four needs is to create trust and doing that by having radical transparency about your company's strategy. Parenthetically, your company has to have an AI strategy. Right now, turn this podcast off, sit down, start putting that together. Whether it's your company or your department, you have to have a strategy. And no strategy, shocker, no strategy is a strategy, but you need to put together a strategy and you need to communicate that to your team. That gives them the trust needed to ensure that they are trusting you to have a plan. Now, that radical transparency may say, we're really not sure. And I think in the development space, a lot of the conversations are, I don't know because talk to me in the morning because things will change by then. But that transparency is essential for leaders today to ensure that their employees are going to be productive.
I think that's great. And I like the tie into trust because I think these needs of followers are so critical. But as I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about what that conversation feels like, especially with technologists, I could see that there's a debate on how it's all going to play out. I don't agree with you. And it is worse than you're saying it is and all that. So I just want to put a spotlight on that because it's not just you're going to give them this information and it's just going to land and people are going to say, okay, thank you for letting me know. Just know that there's going to be debate and conversation around it too. And you have to just be okay with that, not defensive around it, but just being open to that because that's part of the trust and transparency is being able to listen so that people feel like they've been heard and everybody has a voice in the room.
Boy, I think that's the spot on. And I think that like many things that leaders have to talk about, we oftentimes don't have the answer. I kind of compare it to when your company has to do a layoff and the horrible question, which always is asked right after a layoff, somebody will ask, will there be another layoff? And we always have to answer that question with, I always answer it with, I don't know. I'm not in control of that situation. I'm not in control of the finances, the external influences. And you have to just be honest with what you know. And I think to your point here, you have to be honest about what you understand. And I just think that if your company has a strategy around AI, you can lean on that and say, I don't know, but this is our plan. And I think that that's a much better approach than saying, gee whiz, got me, good luck. I think that followers need a leader. And in these times, I think it's important to have a strategy.
I also think it's okay to tie it to a timeline that you feel confident around and saying, I know between now and the end of the year, these are the plans that we have. I can't make any promises, but just to give people hope for the future, that goes to the hope piece of uncertainty in what the future holds makes people feel unsettled.
Oh, for sure. And I also think that one of the other suggestions I like to offer is you need to create psychological safety by almost forcing teams to explore and engage with AI. One of the things that I've done with companies is create these vertical AI labs, because a lot of folks think that AI is only for the engineering team. But even if you're simply using Copilot on Microsoft, you can go out to Microsoft or 365 and they have a ton of training videos. Copilot for marketing, Copilot for legal, Copilot for HR, Copilot for sales. You can create these AI labs within these verticals to allow them to do some experimentation and create that psychological safety. And I think that allows employees to have a little modicum of control and eliminate some of that fear of the unknown.
I like how it's in different verticals of the organization. But what I talk to organizations a lot about is making sure that you're looking out into the organization. So that it's such a great professional development opportunity to have people build trust amongst each other, understand one another's area of business and how they're looking at it, and even presentation and how you prepare for those kind of interactions. It's a great opportunity for development around those communication, transparency amongst colleagues and peers. There's great opportunities there from a professional development perspective.
Totally agree. And one of the things that we've done with that vertical AI labs is that we do a show and tell. It's really fun when the legal team stands up and says, we're doing this, and the marketing team goes, holy crap, we can do that too. And that kind of transparency, like you said, that opportunity for that cross-pollination, cross-conversation is huge here, and we should take advantage of it.
I also think that people can take their own initiative and learn on their own. I see a lot on Instagram, like if you're not taking a class right now, there's like a lot of urgency, you're going to be left behind as a business owner. And I'm like, and it's true. It's like I'm actively using my chat GPT and I'm learning about it, but I also know that I need to look at other ways that AI is being used because I have to at least have an idea of what people are talking about.
Yeah, I think it's important. I had a really challenging conversation with a young woman last week. Her role is very, very susceptible to AI. I think it's one of the more self-evident areas where AI can do a good or better job than that role. And when we were talking about it during quarterly skip level I have with that group, I asked her what her activity in that space was. And I mean, she's in her mid-20s, well-educated in the technology field. And I asked her what her AI strategy was, and she said, I'm just kind of ignoring it and hoping it all works out.
Oh, I didn't mean to laugh, but ignorance.
Yeah,
okay, ignorance is bliss, right? Isn't that where it came from? I understand that sentiment, but that is easy out. And I feel like we're in a time and this technology, that's not an option.
No, I agree. And I think as leaders, the third recommendation is I think we need to take action there and help our teams with some reskilling and internal mobility. You know, I had one conversation with her. I threw 2 tools at her that were in her field. And the following week, she said her mental health was so much better because she just didn't know where to begin. And now she felt like she was at least aware it was going on. So investing in that visibility and the reskilling and that internal mobility, I think goes a long way to creating that trust for the employees. I think it's huge.
You know, we talked last time about AI anxiety, and I feel like that's a story of this is true, this is felt, and don't also as leaders neglect the fact that there's a lot of feelings and emotions that come to this. So don't judge it. Understand that we're all really different, how we're going to move through this. But as a leader, how can you give people more tools so they understand it better?
Right. Well, and I think what's also super interesting is I read an article, one company, gosh, I wish I could remember which one, and I'll put the article in the show notes. It was a large pharmaceutical company, and I think I shared this with you, Susie. They merged their HR group and their IT groups. I don't even know what that means. I mean, that is so orthogonal to anything that I would have considered. I mean, of all the groups to merge together, if you were to ask me who is most likely to be merged, that would be the last ones. I read the article and I got the point. The point I'm trying to make of bringing that up is internal mobility is pretty possible with this knowledge and skill set. And the way things are changing, I think all bets are off on what skills are required to do what jobs. And so I think helping your employees get more educated in this space will give them a tremendous amount of opportunity within your company and elsewhere. So investing in that reskilling and internal mobility conversations, I think will go a long way.
Yeah. Awesome. I think it's a really important conversation that we'll have to continue talking about. And as leaders, it's not something you can take your eye off the ball.
No, I think, honestly, before I know you're wrapping well there, but I think that we need to do this almost every quarter. What is the state of the state today? I laugh that we'd have our annual, let's do this topic for our podcast this year. It's time for the Christmas special, whatever. Look, this is fast moving. And what our recommendation is around psychological safety and AI labs today, in whatever month we're in May, won't look the same by 4th of July. I guarantee that. So this topic will happen more often than we like, but it'll be different conversation every time.
Absolutely.